Something really, really cool happened on the day of my wedding. I couldn't believe it, and neither will you. Let me explain.
Hello! Gosh, we haven't seen each other in ages, have we? That is because I have fallen ill for the last few weeks. You might be able to hear the edge of it on my voice now. Why? Well, is it possible to have such a good day that you immediately become ill after it? Even though you didn't really do or imbibe anything that ought to make you ill. Because that's what happened to me following Saturday, May the 9th. One of the best days I've ever had. The day I got married! Yeah, I got married as all hell that day, but that's not why I'm talking to you. You've looked at the title and the description and you're going, I'm sure there's something more interesting than that happened that day, and you'd be right. There's something that happened that day that would be of particular interest to people who follow my YouTube channel, and I shall tell you about it in just a moment. First of all, let's clear all that business out of the way about the wedding itself. It consisted of the usual things weddings consist of, the I do bit.
Do you take Abby to be your wife, and do you promise to remain true to her for the rest of your lives together?
I do. Any more? The rings bit.
And if I could ask you to hold the ring on the finger on which it's to be worn.
Is it that one? Yes. And the bit that I can't show you, despite the fact that it would be the most interesting bit of the wedding for you, my viewers, but it would be pulled on copyright grounds immediately if I did, which is the bit where we're signing the register while the music goes do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. But instead of all that, I'm going to show you something very exciting that happened at the end of the evening, and is the reason for my slightly lost voice some 3 weeks later. Do you remember that a while ago I posted a video of me banging on some cardboard boxes? Did you then get sufficiently confused by that video as to follow the link that I put at the end of the video to the other video where I explained what it was about and that it was a tribute to something called Return to the Forbidden Planet? Return to the Forbidden Planet! If so, then you will remember me waxing lyrical for a good 20 minutes at least about how wonderful this show is and how important it has been in my life and in the general course of events that have led to me getting married, and that it was something that as teenagers, me and my girlfriend, now wife, that's still weird. Does that ever stop getting weird, married people? Used to go to, I've forgotten how I started to pass this sentence, but we used to go to this as teenagers, and then we used to go to it as 20-somethings, and, well, we realised that when it was coming back was the perfect time to get married, and so we went to it on the night of our wedding, with a big group of, like, loads of people, like a significant chunk of the theatre was just our wedding group, and it was made up of friends who used to come to see the show with us in the 90s, and family, some of whom had seen it with us a couple of times before, some of whom we were introducing to it for the first time. This, to refresh your memory, is the show in which the cast are not just actors and singers, but also the musicians who play the music for the show itself. And as you can see by the poster, it's kind of science fiction-y and a pastiche of 50s and 60s science fiction culture in general. Without going through it all again, and if you click on this then you can see me go through it all again, but without going through it all again, let me just say a shorthand version, which is that this is incredibly important to me. This is a brochure of photographs that I bought the day I went to see the show for the first time. This is the equivalent brochure that I bought this time round. They both contain photographs of the casts of the show of that day doing bits of the show of that day. This one, the 90s, this one, the other one. For example, here's one, this is Sarah Whittock. Here's another one, that's Stuart Nurse. They were two of the stars of the show the first time I saw it, and the first time that I arranged a trip with friends to see it. And I bring them to your attention because they commented on my videos. If you don't use YouTube a lot, you might not know that when you get a message, there's a little bell icon in the corner and it gets a little number next to it telling you how many messages you've got. On this occasion, there was one from Stuart Nurse. And then the next day, I think, or later that day, there was another message, a couple of messages down below that said it was from Sarah Whittock. This continued. More ex-members of the cast started to comment on the video. And I was going, oh my word! And they were all introducing themselves. And I was going, you don't need to introduce yourselves! It was like being inducted into a family that I've known for years, which coincidentally was also what I was going to be doing. On May the 9th, the night we went to see the show again. Things started to get more surreal still. It should be abundantly clear by now that I'm a fan of this show and will check out anything to do with it. And one such thing was an interview with a couple of the cast on BBC Radio Manchester at, I think, the start of the week of my wedding. This person here, Mark Newnham, and that person there, Sarah Scowen, or Scowen, don't know which. Sorry, Sarah, should have asked really.
I looked it up. It's Baxter. That'll show me to go and do a video without doing my research, won't it?
We're interviewed about the show, and nobody told me to listen to this interview. I just listened to it because I'm interested, right? And then I heard this.
We've got a great superfan called Dave.
Hang on a minute.
Who's actually having his wedding reception on Saturday.
Is that...
Because he met his wife watching Return to the Forbidden Planet.
Is that me?
They're coming on Saturday after their wedding and bringing
sure
all their
are?
wedding guests with them.
No.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So where's he based, the superfan, then?
I think
he doesn't live here in Manchester, presumably.
pretty sure.
I think he is.
Does he?
I think
We
he
need
is.
to find him.
Yeah. Where
We
are
need-
you, Dave?
He's called
Yeah.
Demon Tomato Dave on YouTube. You should look him up. He's great.
Well, that was exciting, but that's not what I wanted to show you. Gosh, listen to my voice. We screamed ourselves ragged at the end of that night, and you'll see why in a moment. Well, you won't see why in a moment, because the actual reason is that the show was just brilliant like it is every time it's on, and I'm not going to show you that because there isn't a recording of it that I'm aware of, except for one bit. There is a recording of one bit of that final night, of that final show of Return to the Forbidden Planet, and I'm going to show you that because it's of particular interest to you if you're one of my subscribers. So then the day of the wedding comes. We get married. That went perfectly. We have a buffet with all of our friends. That went perfectly. Then it's the evening. The show is about to start. There outside the theatre is a chap called Richard Darbourne. I knew who he was. He's one of the producers of the show, but I didn't recognise him because I hadn't seen a picture of him before. But he recognised me from my videos. So he called me over and he took me and my wife backstage.
Imagine atmospheric theatre noises here. I can't put the sound on for this clip because we were playing a song that will get the video pulled, but there's the spaceship, there's the set.
Finally, it was time for the show, and now we're coming to the bit that you're going to be particularly interested in. Now, if you haven't seen my video in which I explain what this show is, all you need to know for this bit is the stage is set up to look like the bridge of a starship, as you've just seen. The band's instruments are hidden all around the stage so that they can grab them wherever they happen to be and start playing music, and the dialogue for the play, and this is the weird bit that takes people by surprise and you have to kind of get used to it, but you do get used to it because it's a really good show, is all taken from Shakespeare plays, but sort of mashed up and muddled and juggled together and turned into this science fiction story. Now, they have to introduce you to this concept somehow. Nobody's going to accept that right off the bat, so they have to make it a bit of a joke, and so the first thing that happens is that the ship's bosun comes on the stage, blows his little whistle or something like that, and says, "Friends, crewmen, passengers, lend me your ears." And everyone realises that there's going to be Shakespeare jokes in this, and that pretty much sets the tone. But that isn't what happened on this particular occasion. This is the bosun, Steve Simmons, and that evening, there we all were, sitting there sort of simmering and waiting for the show to start, and he came on the stage and he said, "Friends, crewmen, wedding guests." And we all went, "Oh, that's us." And I was thinking, oh, what a lovely thing to do. Oh, thanks, guys. But that wasn't it. They weren't done yet. It really set us off grinning for the whole night. Then the show happens. It was fantastic, as it ever is. Just great. The cast were fantastic. The audience were loving it. Then it gets to the end. Now, the way this show finishes is, the last few minutes of the show are brilliantly constructed that they basically take it from being this musical, being this story about this crew of this spaceship, and it just sort of transitions gradually over the space of 2 or 3 songs into just a concert. And by the end, after the story's finished, it is discarded, and we are just having a wonderful time listening to a band really be very, very noisy and loud indeed. The last song finishes, the lights drop, everyone's up on their feet cheering and applauding. The lights are off, it's all dark, but everyone's screaming and they're stamping their feet, you know, making that noise that audiences make when they're saying, "No, you've got to come back." And they come back. They've got their guitars slung on their shoulders. Some of them have chucked their costumes backstage and they're just dressed in normal clothes now. As depicted here, I think this is Steve Simmons, the bosun again. And things just get really, 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 really noisy. And as the band are starting their encores, there's always one of them who does a little spiel at the beginning. You know, "Good evening, Manchester, thank you for coming," that sort of stuff. We have a clip of it thanks to one of the cast members who made this video on that evening, and if you listen carefully...
They got married this morning, Saturday, and now they're here with their wedding party. Well, we wish you a well and happy marriage. Thank you very much for coming. We love you. Please give it up, keep it.
And then, it's finally, for real, really finished. And I've seen the show enough times to know that that's it. Return to the Forbidden Planet is over. And we're on our feet, we've got our hands in the air, we're screaming like everyone else is. And then...
Remember that video I made where I'm drumming on the cardboard boxes? This is the video, and it didn't just come out of nowhere. It's my cover of the spaceship launch sequence from the show. On stage they have 2 drummers playing drum kits, one on either side of the stage, and the rest of the crew start to pick up and play different instruments as well. Here, I just used a cardboard box and my voice, because that's what I do. This video wasn't affiliated with the show, you understand. They didn't have me make this. I made it as a tribute, partly to see if I could get some of my subscribers to go and see the show, which some did, thanks guys, but mostly I made it in the hope that some of the people from the show would see it and just get a kick out of it. They didn't know I was going to do it, and I didn't even have the slightest clue that at the end of the show that night, this was going to happen.
Needless to say, that is the largest audience I've ever played to. And so, some thanks are in order. Thank you to everyone involved in getting Return to the Forbidden Planet back on the road again. Thanks to Richard Darborn, the producer, for getting in touch with me in the first place, and to Frida Ruth, who played the robot in the first version of it I ever saw, and, prior to this one, the last version of it I ever saw, for getting in touch with me years ago and cluing me into the fact that people like me can join in with stuff like this that we love. Otherwise, I wouldn't have recorded the song in the first place. Thanks to Bob Carlton, whose show it is, for giving me so many really fun evenings across my life, and for giving me the excuse I needed to meet Abby in real life in the first place, because we used to just be friends on the internet. That was you, Bob! Thanks again! He is one of the many people whose hands I got to shake at the end of the night when I went to the bar next door and met all of the cast, all of them absolutely lovely people. Thanks to whoever it was on the sound team that worked on getting my video to sound good on those speakers, because it really did! Thanks to Mark Shale, the company manager, and to Mark Newnham, who I introduced you to before, one of the stars of the show, because it was their idea to put the video on at the end, and oh my gosh, it really made our night. I have failed in my every attempt to communicate with you if you are not completely aware that this is a big deal for me. And thanks to Amanda and Pink Tim for all of that lovely chatting all of those years ago, and without whom I simply would not have been able to get my song recorded in the first place to be played on that screen at the show. I never knew Tim's second name, so I don't know if he's the Tim mentioned in the programme, but I did know Amanda's and I know that she is. So, thanks again, Amanda. Wish you could have been there. You would have loved it. At the end of it, as the lights finally came back up again, and the first of several for the rest of the evening, people who'd been in the audience came up to congratulate us on our wedding. One of my friends, actually the first friend I ever saw the show with, came over to us and said, I think you basically just won.
www.youtube.com/